Hey, what's shaking, guys? Welcome back. I wanted to bring you guys along today. I'm building some bookcases, and what you see behind me here is the first of 4 upper bookcase units that I need to build this afternoon. I'm trying some different techniques. Thought it'd be cool to make a video just showing the process, some things I'm experimenting with. Now, one of the challenges I'm dealing with on building these bookcases is I've got this whole wall of bookcases and my stiles are only 1.5 inches wide, but they'll be doubled up here, so it'll actually be 3 inches once both bookcases are put together. But how do we join our plywood side to these stiles? There's different ways of doing that. A lot of cabinet shops will utilize a dado in their face frame so that the plywood is received into this face frame part exactly and precisely, so that you've got the same margins on both sides, so that your shelves are all exactly the way they need to be once you go to put those in. Basically, the problem that I have is I don't do dados typically. That may change someday, but the way I'm set up now, I don't do dados. So how do I join this face frame to this plywood in a very crisp, consistent way? By the way, if you're wondering what this piece and this piece is, I call these stretchers. And because these are going in raw, unfinished, I can get away with putting a screw in the face frame to help keep things stabilized during transportation. And then I cut these stretchers exactly the same length as my rails, and it helps keep everything perfectly uniform so that whenever I'm installing these, it all goes together much more crisply. Then I can pop the pocket hole screw out, fill the hole, and I'm good to go later on. I know a lot of you guys who build cabinets and they're actually finished can't get away with doing something like that, but I do it all the time. It's kind of cheating a little bit. Back to the problem at hand. So how do we join this face frame to this plywood and keep this plywood with the exact same margins the whole way up and down? A lot of times plywood's not perfectly straight. A lot of times our face frame material is not perfectly straight, although I do try and mill it very carefully so that I'm working with very straightly jointed pieces, because I just find it makes building cabinets so much easier. Spoiler alert, what I ended up doing was using a combination of pocket hole screws and biscuits, and it's worked out great so far. The way I attached this frame was with standard number 20 biscuits. I always use Lamello biscuits. They're the most consistent size, thickness-wise, so they always fit in the slot just like you want them to. If you go to the box store and get biscuits, a lot of times they're thin or thick, so your stuff doesn't line up real well. That's just a side note. So this one, used regular number 20 wood biscuits. But there's a product I've really been wanting to experiment with, and it is these K20 biscuits by Lamello. So basically we'll stick this in our slot, and it's milled in a way that it's got these barbs on it. So once you stick it in there, it's stuck. Then you can smack that face frame down, and then it kind of just locks it in place. Saw another carpenter recently using these, Dark Horse Carpentry. Check him out on YouTube. He doesn't have a lot of videos, but he posted one recently installing pre-finished material using these. And I thought I need to get more skilled with these things because it would be really handy. So I'm experimenting with these today. Normally when I'm building cabinets, I'll just take a double square and mark a line along my face frame and then pocket hole screw my plywood onto my face frame. You're manipulating things to get it on your line back and forth. It doesn't always work great. The advantage with what we're going to do right now is it's all automatically going to drop in place exactly where it's supposed to be, because we are going to have biscuits everywhere. How do we figure out where to position our biscuit slot on the face frame as well as on the cabinet plywood? Well, the way I designed these in SketchUp, this plywood will be centered exactly on the face frame. So all I've got to do is set my biscuit joiner so that it's exactly centered on my 1.5 inch face frame. It's really easy to do. I'll show you how to do that in a second, and then we're going to do the same thing on the plywood. Now, rather than switch back and forth with biscuit joiner settings, I'm just gonna set up 2 different biscuit joiners, one for the face frame, one for the plywood. Here you'll see I've got a scrap of my face frame material, which is 1.5 inches wide. It matches my face frame material exactly because this is an offcut. And I want to center my blade on this material. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna plunge a slot as close to center as we can get, just eyeballing it with our settings here. And then we're gonna flip it around and then offset where we're mortising by about 1/2 of a biscuit width. And we'll look at that and see how those 2 mortises line up. And that'll tell us if we're centered or not. If we're not centered, we'll make a minor adjustment until we are centered. So to do this, now what you can do is look down at your mortise here and you'll see that this one is ever so slightly off, but it's still very close. So if I wanted to make a minor adjustment, I could do that. This one was actually the one that I did previously on the first cabinet and it looked perfect. So I might not have been holding it quite right whenever I mortised these. In any case, it's close enough. Now I'm gonna use a different biscuit joiner and I'm gonna center this one on my 18mm plywood, which is about 11/16 thick. So we'll do the same thing here. Offset it about 1/2 of a biscuit width. So basically you're lining up your center on your biscuit joiner with the end of the biscuit slot. And there again, so you can see it's pretty close. It's not quite perfect, but it's very, very close to centered. Next, we'll just make some layout marks. All I'm doing is going every 6 inches. So I'm gonna start here at 6. I'm gonna look at for my 6 on the tape. So I'm basically putting a biscuit about every foot. And I see down here at the very end, that'll get me a little bit too close to the end, so I'm gonna drop it down to 5. So it's very easy to lay out. Just remember, you're pulling off of the top of your face frame, and so then we'll pull off of the top of our plywood also when we mortise those biscuits. Just a note on workflow, I need to flip this around now and I have crap all over my workbench because I built that first bookcase to experiment and I assembled it and that's out of process. You really want to batch all your processes so you're doing all of these steps at the same time, and then when it's time to actually assemble everything, then you do it on the table, then you get your tools out, and instead I've got a whole bunch of different tools for different parts of the process sitting out here, and it's a mess. Okay, so over here, we've got our face frames all done. They're mortised, basically ready to install once we get our carcass parts done. At the end of the year, I got a promotion from my Hayfella rep that they had these carts on sale, and basically the more of them that you bought, the cheaper they got. So I ended up buying 3 of these things, and I have been loving it in the shop so far. They're perfect for stacking up plywood. I see a lot of guys will put like pipe insulation or pool noodles around these so that your stuff can't get damaged, but since all my stuff is basically raw, I'm not super worried about it at this point, but they're working out really well, helping shop efficiency a lot and just really convenient to use. And now I'll do basically the exact same layout on my side pieces. I had the Lamello set up for the face frame, and just for simplicity's sake, I'm using the second biscuit joiner here. I got my DeWalt for this plywood. I almost always just let the dust fly with this biscuit joiner, but this plywood is nasty stuff, so I'm gonna swap it out and put the hose adapter on this guy so that I'm not breathing in all this sawdust. Now that I've got my biscuit slots done, I'm gonna put these back on my cart, roll over to the line boring machine, get all my shelf peg holes done. Then we'll roll over to the Castle pocket hole machine, get my pocket holes mortised, and it'll be back over here for assembly. I would be curious what type of plywood you guys are using in your shops. I just started getting plywood from a different supplier, and I'm trying out this import plywood. This is Dragon Ply, 18 millimeter. And the biggest problem I have is after cutting it, you stack it up. If you leave it sit for a couple days on a stack, your end pieces will curl up really bad and get really bowed. So I mean, you can like see like here, like this piece is like a banana. It's not straight at all because it was on the end. Like I said, it's fine if you cut and put stuff together right away and I can work with it, but it's really annoying. So I may end up switching up plywoods, I'm not sure. The price is right and I can work with it, it's just annoying. Onto the pocket hole machine. This area of the shop is an area that I'm tweaking a lot right now. I've got my face frame clamping table right here, pocket hole machine, and then I'm coming off the miter saw, just trying to figure out what configuration works best to maximize space as well as my workflow. I actually just moved it around a little bit this morning, but it's a work in progress. Last night, I actually just made modification and hooked up dust collection to this. It didn't really have a good dust collection system built into this. Basically, everything was just gonna fall down on the bottom of this cabinet. So I put one of those big gulp hoods, dust collector hoods in there with a piece of plywood to divert the sawdust down. And it's actually working out amazingly well. You can't see it all in there, but trust me, it's good. Okay, so it's time to be putting our face frame on. A few notes on how I like to put together my cabinet carcasses. KISS, keep it simple. That's kind of my philosophy, and a lot of that has been because I started building built-ins on the job site where you had to build things very simply with very basic tools. So I've stuck with that philosophy for the most part, but we are experimenting a little bit today. So we put together our cabinet sides. I use stretchers. That gives us something to fasten the cabinet to the wall with. 1/4-inch plywood on the back. I staple that with 22 gauge staples, 5/8 long legs, and that holds actually extremely well. Now we'll go ahead and put the face frame on. Taking a look at these K20s, you'll see these barbs, and I'm not sure how well the camera is going to pick it up. You'll see that they're kind of angled on there, and what that is going to do is whenever we push this into the biscuit slot, it is going to bind in there. So these are not something that you want to put in and take out. I don't think they're gonna come out after they go in. And I will say again, just as a reminder, we're just experimenting here. I would normally use just regular biscuits. You could even use Lamello tensos, though, you know, might be a little bit overkill in this scenario. But what I really am wanting to do today is just try out these K20s, because I've never used that type of biscuit before, and I just want to get a little bit more familiar with them, get a feel for them. That way I've got an idea on the different things that I might be able to use them for down the road. The other reason I think a lot of you guys might find these useful is these just require a regular biscuit joiner. You don't need the Lamello Zeta for these. Just any biscuit joiner slot will work. At this point, I just pushed the face frame on, tapped it a little bit with the mallet. There are no fasteners in here besides these K20s, and I can lift it up and shake it, and it is it's not coming loose at all. So that's pretty cool. Definitely a very, very useful fastener to have around. That actually worked out great. The K20s were overkill for this situation, but the biscuits themselves worked fantastic in terms of placing the face frame exactly where it needed to be, and then having the plywood self-center exactly where it needed to be on the face frame. The problem is, you know, you can definitely do this with just glue and pocket hole screws with a square butt joint, plywood to face frame. But you saw like how much I'm fighting with this plywood not being straight right now. And if you have glue all over that and you're trying to drop a face frame on it, moving parts all around, the glue just gets all over everything and it's a mess and just kind of a pain. Whereas with this, you glue it, drop the biscuits in, and everything just self-centers right in place. Alrighty, now we're on to our next face frame. And this one, I'm just gonna use regular number 20 biscuits because all we're really using in this instance, all we really need is alignment. I'm not even gluing these biscuits super good or anything. I'm not putting them in for strength. It's just to help guide the face frame to cabinet carcass connection so that it's where I want it to be. As you can see, dropped in place great. Everything lines up really good. The one difference with this is with regular biscuits, I can lift it right back up off the thing. It's not being held in place. Whereas with those K20 barbed biscuits, you could literally like pick the whole thing up and it's gonna stay connected. So it's just learning these different connectors and being able to apply them to different situations to do better work. That's all we're really trying to do here. Well, we've got an interesting situation here, and this will be a good experiment. I put a K20 biscuit in right here, and I shouldn't have because I couldn't put a slot in that spot on that face frame. So I've got to try to take this thing out. We're going to see how it goes. Oh, no big deal. Not a big deal at all. Okay. All right, guys, so got these 4 upper units for these bookcases ready to ship out. Kind of a random video. I was working and I thought, I could make a video on this, grabbed the camera and started shooting. So hopefully you were able to pick up some tips and tricks along the way. Being able to center a biscuit joiner and use it in situations like this is definitely a skill worth having. Cool little products like these Lamello K20s, another good good knowledge to have, good skill to have, and just a good connector asset to have in the toolbox. So let me know what you think in the comments. Any questions, let me know. Otherwise, we'll see you on the next video. Thanks for watching.